Kevin Magnussen, K-Mag, the Magmeister. Okay, yeah, that last one isn't a thing. The Haas driver from Denmark recently secured a sterling 9th place finish at the Hungarian Grand Prix, later demoted to 10th place due to a post-race penalty, but securing a vital point for the struggling Haas team, even finding himself up in 3rd place at one point thanks to a brilliant tyre strategy call. But over the years, K-Mag has found himself racing for quite a few teams and has faced a few tricky situations over the years. Notably, after forcing Nico Hülkenberg off track at the 2017 Hungarian Grand Prix, they had a rather delicate choice of words to say to each other post-race, with Hülkenberg branding him a hothead and wannabe Verstappen. Another incident with Alonso later on in the season forced Magnussen to defend himself, stating that F1 penalties were going too far. Magnussen had no issue when Max Verstappen forced him off track and onto the grass at Monza in Italy, saying, "That's just racing." Pierre Gasly is no friend of Magnussen either, after they had a pretty close coming together at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in 2018, with Gasly branding the Dane as the most dangerous driver he has ever raced against. And 2019 saw him come together a couple of times with his teammate Romain Grosjean. It's fair to say he's no stranger to a battle or two on track, but are the labels of hothead, wannabe Verstappen, most dangerous guy ever really that accurate? Or is Kevin Magnussen just a bit of an old school racer who likes to get his elbows out on track? As well as a sterling effort to finish the Hungarian Grand Prix in 9th position, maintaining that ahead of a Ferrari and a McLaren in a car that currently is not a top 10 point scoring car, he's also achieved quite a few things in his F1 career so far. Magnussen's career is actually quite an interesting one. He is the only driver to have ever raced all 4 power units in the hybrid era: Mercedes, Honda, Renault, and now Ferrari. 2014 was his debut year with the McLaren F1 team, and he replaced Sergio Perez and had a pretty good start, brought up the same route that Lewis Hamilton was. He qualified in Australia pretty well and went on to achieve his first podium position at his debut race, achieving 2nd ahead of his teammate Jenson Button. It was a pretty meh season after that. Although he was consistently in the points, it wasn't enough to retain his seat, and he was put on the sidelines for Fernando Alonso to come and take his place. A year away from racing, he returned to the grid, cutting ties with McLaren to take up the lead role at the Renault F1 team in what was a pretty dire season. But crucially, Magnussen scored 7 of the team's 8 points, absolutely trouncing teammate Jolyon Palmer. For 2017, despite being offered another contract to stay with Renault, Magnussen decided he'd had enough and signed to race for the new F1 team, America's Haas F1. And there he has been ever since, alongside teammate Romain Grosjean. Their first year together, Grosjean got the better half of him, but since then, 2018, in what proved to be Magnussen's best year in F1 so far, he absolutely annihilated his French teammate. The last 2 seasons, though, have proven a little bit hot and cold, racing a relatively uncompetitive and unpredictable Haas F1 car. But my point is, Kevin Magnussen, I believe, is less dangerous driver and more underrated, and actually one of the most skilled drivers on the grid. He drags the best out of any machinery he is given and has only improved throughout the years as he's matured as a driver. And he also seems to create a bit of a better atmosphere around him than his teammate Grosjean. The Haas F1 team just seems to work better around Magnussen, and he's definitely a bit more of the de facto team leader role. It's a shame he didn't get a proper chance at McLaren to prove himself, but wouldn't you rather have a driver who sometimes pushes the limit and goes over it, and that can result in a few dust-ups and crashes, but someone who is consistently bringing points home, valuable points, especially for a midfield team? Or would you rather have a driver who perhaps isn't always right at the limit and is perhaps a bit more reined in, not always consistent, not always bringing home those points finishes when you need them, and basically not bringing home the bacon? I don't know. If I was given the option, I'd probably choose to have Kevin Magnussen in my team. Consistent, fast, aggressive, with the occasional blip, but I'd take that over some of the other drivers in that field. And I have to say, I think he gets a bit of a bad rep. He's an old school racer at heart. That's what we want, isn't it? But what do you think? Do you think Kevin Magnussen is a dangerous driver, or do you think he's underrated and perhaps one of the more skilled drivers on the grid? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Just search MotorMouth. I've been Harry Benjamin, and I'll see you next time.